As your awakening matures, something remarkable begins to happen. You no longer feel the urge to justify your path to anyone. There is a quiet confidence that grows inside you, a sense of alignment that needs no approval and seeks no permission. You start living from an inner truth that cannot be debated or explained, only embodied. People may still project their assumptions, misunderstand your choices, or question the shifts they see in you, but these reactions no longer destabilize your inner world. Instead, they reveal how far you have traveled from the version of yourself that once needed to be understood. You begin to recognize that the relationships, habits, and beliefs that shaped your old identity no longer define you. The world around you continues to operate in familiar patterns, yet you feel yourself moving with a different rhythm, responding from a deeper intelligence. Your life becomes less about convincing others and more about honoring the quiet direction that rises from within. And as you follow this direction, you notice that the right people naturally gravitate toward your presence, while those who do not resonate gently fall away. This shift does not require confrontation. It happens organically as your energy reorganizes itself around truth rather than expectation. What once felt like isolation now feels like alignment. What once felt like losing people now feels like finding yourself. And what once felt like confusion now feels like clarity. You preserve your inner space, not because you are closing yourself off, but because you are finally opening to a way of being that does not compromise your authenticity. This is the point where awakening stops being a concept and becomes a lived expression, guiding your steps with precision you could never explain but can always feel. And if you have reached this stage, even quietly, even without fully naming it, acknowledge the path that brought you here. Your awareness, your discernment, your silence, your transformation, none of it happened by accident. There is purpose in every shift you have experienced, and there is more unfolding ahead, waiting for the part of you that is now ready to receive it. And if this message resonates with where you are right now, leave a comment saying, "This message was for me," so I know you felt this truth in your own way. If this journey has added clarity to your path, consider subscribing to the channel so we can continue walking through these deeper layers together. And if the connection you felt here brought you insight, a simple like helps this space reach others who may need the same clarity. There is a video here that expands this perspective with even more depth, so let your intuition guide you and continue with me there. As this inner discernment grows stronger, you begin to realize that exposing the deeper layers of your awakening to those who still operate from unconscious patterns creates an invisible tension, a subtle friction that you can feel even if no one speaks a word. What you perceive as clarity, they perceive as discomfort. What feels to you like a natural expression of your evolving awareness can feel to them like a threat, as if your very presence disrupts the familiar structure they depend on. This is why spiritually awakened individuals often learn, sometimes painfully, that revealing certain perceptions too openly invites resistance rather than understanding. When you share insights that arise from expanded consciousness with someone who is not ready to receive them, it creates an energetic imbalance. They might twist your meaning, dismiss your experience, or project their own fears onto your words. Not because they are malicious, but because consciousness has its own timing. And when someone is confronted with truths they have not yet grown into, the truth feels overwhelming. You may sense this instantly in their reactions, the sudden defensiveness, the nervous laughter, the subtle irritation they cannot explain. It is the mind resisting what the soul is not yet prepared to absorb. Part of the awakening process is learning to interpret these reactions without internalizing them. You start recognizing that the discomfort does not belong to you. It belongs to the space between worlds, the bridge between awareness and sleep. What you carry inside you cannot be translated into the language of those who still rely on external validation, rigid beliefs, or emotional avoidance to navigate life. They listen from the surface while you speak from depth, and depth, when met with surfaces, echoes strangely. This is why awakened souls gradually become more intentional with their words, choosing silence where they once chose explanation. It is not withdrawal, it is wisdom emerging from experience, an inner knowing that some truths must remain protected until the surrounding space can hold them without distortion. And as this awareness settles into your daily life, you begin to notice something else shifting within you, something that quietly reshapes the way you interact with the world around you. As this shift becomes more pronounced, you begin to see how easily your spiritual sensitivity can be misunderstood by those who interpret life only through the lens of the ego. When you reveal a deeper perception, they often hear it through the filter of their own unresolved fears, insecurities, and emotional defenses. What was meant as insight becomes taken as judgment. What was offered as clarity is perceived as criticism, and without realizing it, you become a mirror reflecting parts of them they have spent years avoiding. This is why your honesty can feel threatening, why your presence sometimes stirs reactions that seem disproportionate or strangely hostile. Spiritual awakening heightens your ability to feel emotional undercurrents, sense energetic shifts, and perceive truths that are invisible to the unawakened mind. But revealing this, sensitivity can place you in a vulnerable position because most people are not prepared to face what your intuition exposes. They may accuse you of imagining things, overthinking, or being too intense. They may laugh off your perceptions as if they are trivial, or worse, they may subtly shame you for seeing what they are not ready to confront. And slowly, you begin to understand that their reaction has nothing to do with whether you are right or wrong. It has everything to do with their readiness. This realization marks a turning point. You start recognizing that spiritual depth is not something to announce, it is something to embody quietly. The more you reveal, the more others project. The more they project, the more you feel drained. And so you learn to hold back, not out of fear, but out of self-preservation. You stop exposing the insights that leave you feeling energetically stripped, emotionally misunderstood, or intellectually dismissed. It becomes clear that the soul cannot thrive when constantly forced to defend its own truth. And as this understanding settles in, you begin to see the world differently. You no longer share to be understood. You no longer reveal yourself hoping someone will meet you at the same depth. Instead, you observe silently, allowing your awareness to guide you. But in this silence, something else begins to unfold beneath the surface of your awakening, something that will soon change not only how you speak, but how you exist. As you continue moving through this inner transformation, you begin to understand that your spiritual vulnerability is not something that can be placed carelessly into the hands of others. Awakening exposes you to a level of perception that most people are simply not equipped to hold. When you sense energies shifting in the room, when you feel the emotional weight behind someone's words, or when you intuitively recognize what remains unspoken, it can create an uncomfortable imbalance in your interactions. You notice that people react not to what you say, but to what they feel you see, and this depth, though natural to you now, can provoke subtle forms of resistance. Some individuals respond with quiet envy, sensing that you operate from a clarity they cannot access. Others become defensive, interpreting your calm awareness as superiority, even though you never intended to project anything of the sort. Awakening amplifies your sensitivity, but it also amplifies the projections that others cast upon you. The more attuned you become to your inner world, the more reactive their outer world becomes. You start witnessing this tension everywhere, in conversations that suddenly shift tone, in glances that last a moment too long, in the slight discomfort people feel when you do not play along with unconscious roles. This is when you begin to understand that silence becomes a form of protection, not withdrawal. You learn to shield certain parts of your soul because exposing them invites misinterpretation, jealousy, or emotional intrusion. There is a sacredness in your new awareness, and not everyone can meet it with purity. So you guard it quietly, intuitively, instinctively, and in doing so, you start to see the true architecture of human relationships, the fragile bridges between perception and fear, between presence and avoidance. If any part of this resonates with what you have lived, leave a comment sharing your experience. Your reflection might help another. Awakened soul feel less alone as this journey deepens and leads into the next layer of understanding that is beginning to take shape within you. As this inner protection becomes more instinctive, you begin confronting another quiet truth of awakening: the impossibility of translating certain spiritual experiences into language that others can genuinely understand. There are moments of insight, profound shifts in perception, expansions of consciousness that feel so real to you, yet slip through words the moment you try to explain them. It is not that people dismiss your experience intentionally, it is that some realities cannot be grasped through explanation. They must be lived, felt, endured, and embodied. When someone has not yet walked that path, their mind naturally tries to fit your experience into concepts it already knows, and in doing so, the essence becomes distorted. You may have tried to describe a moment of deep stillness, a sudden clarity, an intuitive knowing that arrived without logic, or a shift in emotional perception that changed the way you interact with the world. But instead of resonance, you received confusion, skepticism, or polite nods that carried no true understanding. And slowly, you learned that some truths cannot be shared because they are not meant to be validated externally. Awakening turns your inner world into a landscape that others cannot navigate. They might hear your words, but they cannot feel the terrain beneath them. This disconnect can create a subtle loneliness, not because you are isolated, but because your reality is no longer shaped by the same frameworks that guide the lives of those around you. You are no longer moved by the same fears, motivated by the same desires, or limited by the same illusions. And yet trying to communicate this difference often leads to friction or misunderstanding. So you begin to hold your experiences more privately, not in secrecy, but in recognition that they belong to a dimension of awareness still unfolding inside you. As this shift deepens, you start navigating the world with a quieter kind of confidence, trusting your inner transformation even when it cannot be articulated. But beneath this new silence, something else is forming, something that will redefine not just what you share, but how you exist within spaces that cannot hold your depth. As your awakening becomes more embodied, you begin to feel the energetic consequences of sharing parts of your soul in spaces that cannot receive them. It becomes increasingly clear that every environment carries its own frequency, and when your consciousness expands, you feel those frequencies more intensely than ever before. Certain rooms feel heavy, certain conversations drain you instantly, and certain people stir an unease that you cannot rationalize. What once went unnoticed now lands on you with unmistakable weight. And when you expose spiritual depth in those places, you feel the shift immediately. The energy of the environment pushes back, as if rejecting what it cannot process. This awareness teaches you that your inner world is not meant to be placed everywhere. There are truths that collapse under the density of low awareness spaces. There are insights that lose their brilliance when spoken to ears unprepared to hear them. There are feelings that wither in the presence of emotional chaos. And the more you awaken, the more you sense how fragile certain states of consciousness are when exposed to people who interact only from reactivity, ego, or emotional avoidance. Your soul begins to recoil from those interactions, not from superiority, but from instinct. You start noticing how your energy shifts after revealing too much. A heaviness settles in your chest. Your mind feels cluttered with emotions that are not yours. Your intuition becomes blurred by the noise of others' unresolved wounds. You begin to realize that sharing your inner world is not harmless. It is an exchange. And when the exchange is imbalanced, you walk away carrying weight that does not belong to you. This understanding reshapes your relationship with vulnerability. You no longer offer your spiritual depth freely because you can feel the cost of doing so. Your soul learns to recognize where it thrives and where it contracts. And in this recognition, you begin to glimpse another truth forming quietly beneath the surface, a truth that will soon reveal why awakening often leads you toward a kind of sacred isolation that few truly understand. As this deeper awareness settles into your daily life, you begin to understand why spiritual awakening so often leads to a quiet, almost instinctive form of isolation. It is not the lonely isolation people imagine, nor is it a withdrawal caused by bitterness or disappointment. Rather, it is a natural response to the widening gap between your inner world and the external world around you. You start noticing how the more your consciousness expands, the less you feel the need to explain yourself, defend your choices, or seek approval for your inner truth. There is a growing sense of inner sovereignty, a clarity that no longer depends on being understood. This shift creates a subtle distance in your relationships. Conversations that once felt engaging now feel shallow. People you used to confide in can no longer meet you where you are. The emotional language you speak has changed, and very few can hear it. Without misinterpreting it as intensity, strangeness, or disconnection, what feels natural to you now may feel foreign to them. And instead of forcing connection, you find yourself choosing silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you recognize the futility of expressing depth in spaces that cannot receive it. In this silence, something unexpected happens. You begin to feel more like yourself than ever before. The solitude becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space where your intuition grows sharper, your emotional clarity becomes cleaner, and your inner voice becomes unmistakably your own. The isolation is not a cage, it is a container, a protected environment where your soul can breathe without being pulled back into the noise of old patterns and unconscious expectations. And yet, this shift can feel confusing at times. You may wonder why certain people drift away, why familiar connections fade, or why your heart no longer responds to the same emotional dynamics. But this is the quiet recalibration of awakening, the inner restructuring that prepares you for a new kind of connection, one that has not yet fully revealed itself. If this part of the journey resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. Your reflection might help another awakened soul recognize that this sacred isolation is not an ending, but the beginning of something deeper, taking shape within them. As this sacred isolation becomes more familiar, you begin to sense the emotional weight that comes with holding deeper perceptions in a world that often moves too fast to notice them. Awakening magnifies everything. The subtle tensions in a room, the unspoken fears behind someone's smile, the emotional exhaustion hidden beneath casual conversations. You start carrying more than your own feelings, not because you intend to, but because heightened awareness naturally tunes you into layers of reality that most people are not conscious of. This sensitivity can feel like both a gift and a burden, expanding your capacity for empathy while simultaneously stretching your emotional boundaries. You may find yourself absorbing the moods of others without realizing it, feeling drained by interactions that once felt effortless, or sensing the unresolved pain people carry long before they ever speak of it. This emotional weight does not overwhelm you because you are weak, but because your inner landscape has become more open, more receptive, more permeable. What others overlook now lands sharply on your awareness, and yet you often cannot speak about this sensitivity because explaining it to those who have not experienced it feels impossible. They may dismiss it as overthinking or imagination, unaware that perception itself has become a different experience for you. This is where the real challenge emerges. Awakening teaches you to navigate your inner world with precision, but it does not shield you from the emotional turbulence of others. You learn to walk through life with a quiet vigilance, discerning what is yours to carry and what is not. Still, there are days when the emotional weight feels heavier than expected, when your clarity becomes clouded by the noise of unprocessed energies moving around you. And yet, despite this intensity, something inside you continues to strengthen. You begin to understand that this emotional weight is not meant to break you, but to refine your awareness, to sharpen your discernment, to deepen your connection to the world without losing yourself in it. And as this realization slowly anchors itself within you, another shift begins to unfold beneath the surface, one that will transform not only how you feel, but what you choose to share moving forward. As this inner refinement continues, you begin to distinguish something essential about the way you share yourself with the world. There is a subtle but powerful difference between sharing to connect and sharing to be understood. Before awakening, you may have spoken about your feelings, your perceptions, or your inner struggles, hoping someone would mirror them back to you with clarity or validation. But now, you see how rarely true understanding happens on the level you once expected. Instead of forcing alignment, you learn to share only when there is resonance, only when the space feels capable of holding what you reveal without flattening it or reshaping it into something it is not. This realization softens you. It frees you from the old need to explain yourself, to justify your inner world, or to seek emotional translation from people who do not speak the same inner language. You begin to connect in a different way, a quieter and more intentional way. When you share now, it is not to be validated, but to offer authenticity without demanding anything in return. And when someone meets you at that depth, even briefly, the connection feels rare, almost sacred. But when they cannot, you no longer feel disappointed. You simply understand that alignment cannot be forced. This shift also changes how you listen. You begin hearing the emotional layers beneath people's words, recognizing the longing, fear, or confusion that shapes their expression. You no longer expect them to hear you with the same depth, because you recognize that everyone is speaking from the level of awareness they currently inhabit. This understanding removes the pressure from your interactions. It allows you to remain grounded, present, and clear even when misunderstanding arises. And yet, despite this growing clarity, there remains an even deeper truth that begins to surface, one that challenges the very foundation of how you once related to the world. It is the understanding that protecting certain parts of your soul is not just about avoiding misunderstanding. It is about preserving something sacred, something that cannot be exposed without losing its strength. This emerging awareness is what prepares you for the final stage of this transformation, where the true meaning of spiritual protection becomes unmistakably clear. As this deeper understanding settles within you, you begin to recognize that spiritual protection is not a reaction to fear, but an act of alignment. There are parts of your soul that become stronger only when held close, parts of your inner truth that lose their purity when exposed to noise, indifference, or misunderstanding. Awakening teaches you that your light is not meant to shine everywhere, without direction. It is meant to illuminate the spaces that can receive it, nurture it, and reflect it back without distortion. This shift changes everything. You no longer feel compelled to reveal your depths to anyone who asks, nor to justify the parts of you that have evolved beyond old expectations. You start living with a sense of quiet discernment. You know which parts of yourself are meant to be shared and which must remain sacred. You sense when a space can hold your truth and when it cannot. And with this clarity, your energy becomes more stable, your intuition sharper, your boundaries more natural. You no longer give away pieces of your inner world hoping for recognition. Instead, you protect what is still forming, what is delicate, what is transforming you from within. This is the essence of spiritual maturity, understanding that revelation is a choice, not a duty. And yet, even as you guard these deeper layers, you begin to move through life with more openness, not less. Your protection is not a wall, it is a filter. It allows genuine connection to flow more freely while letting everything misaligned pass through without leaving a wound. What once felt heavy now feels lighter. What once confused you now feels unmistakably clear. You are no longer shaped by the world, you are shaped by the awareness rising inside you. If you reach this point, leave a comment saying, "This message was for me, so I know this journey resonates with you." If this voice speaks to your inner world, make sure you are subscribed and consider giving the video a like to support this space we are building together. And if you want to continue expanding this awareness, there is another video waiting for you right here. It deepens these insights in a way that aligns perfectly with what you just experienced. So click and continue walking with me as this awakening unfolds.